Hi, Roberta. This is my second video of my video journal journey, reflecting on my dad's life and passing earlier this year and uh, my journey with my workshop and seeing how those reflections unfold. And yeah, my topic for today is perfectionism. And yeah, I'm definitely someone who can be prone to perfectionism in a way that isn't helpful. And these videos for me are scary because I have an idea of what I want to talk about, but I'm not scripting myself uh, and I'm not redoing it if something goes wrong. I'm just going with the flow, and and that's scary because I'm prone to perfectionism, and maybe to frame what that perfectionism is um, wanting things to be just right. Uh, and um, yeah, what that looks like to other people is scary because how am I going to be judged, or uh, is what I'm saying going to be interpreted in a particular way, or and so that makes it scary, and it makes you want to go back and rethink things or re-say things, which is why writing from a journaling point of view is much easier, and doing a video is much harder, and that's why I'm taking on the challenge in many ways. I did a leadership course last year, and one of the themes was perfectionism, and looking at it from an academic point of view, and particularly what I think the word is etiology, the source of perfectionism, particularly when it becomes maladaptive. And one of the strongest correlations in the academic literature is what's called affectionless parental control. And this was obviously something that came out in the midst of a long therapy journey for me, and I could place a lot of it into that journey, the academic literature and reflection on that. Uh, and so that was quite interesting for me to see some of the correlations to my childhood journey, and uh, and effectively what I, as a child, experienced as traumatic, and maybe to talk through, I guess, my therapy framework, or how I think about it, is everybody experiences trauma in different ways. When something isn't the way that you want it or expect it to be, that is traumatic. And kids live through trauma with little t's in various ways all the time. Um, and so I'm not necessarily talking about big capital T trauma, as it's often referred to. And we as humans, at least the way I've framed it, is that we absorb the things that we experience that are tough, and sometimes it's um, not tough, but we learn to cope with the things in our environment and the things that happen, and the interactions we have with other people, and those coping mechanisms are there to protect us. And so even just stubbing a toe is a traumatic experience, but you hopefully learn from it and adapt in a way that you don't stub your toe on whatever it was that you stubbed your toe on. And so we learn these ways of coping with the circumstances that are difficult. And I think where those sorts of traumas become unhelpful or maladaptive is where those coping mechanisms that we learned in a season of life are no longer serving us in a later season of life. And and that's where I think therapy really helps. And I remember having a conversation a long time ago with someone who said, well, he's not convinced that digging up this past trauma stuff from a therapy point of view is helpful or valuable. And I think in seasons where things are stable, that certainly can be true. But one of the things that I've experienced in my, I guess, therapy journey and reflecting on things that I was doing that were no longer helpful compared to how helpful they had been in the past, has been this recognition that I can do the therapy work. I can reframe past experiences in a way that is more helpful going forward. But there are still almost subconscious realities that impact us. And so part of the therapy journey is raising those subconscious things more to the surface so that we're aware of how certain things are affecting us and can then adapt going forward. But there's still a physiological or nervous system impact of how we've always operated in the past. And I think that's where the therapy journey almost starts losing its value. We might have moved beyond the coping with the subconscious triggers or being aware of those subconscious triggers and are able to better cope with that. But our nervous system is still reacting in the way that it would in the past. And I really think some of the value of a journey where you integrate what you do into the way that you are thinking differently about things can be really valuable in realigning almost the nervous system's experience with the evolved psychological perspective that one might have gained through therapy. And so it's almost therapy in and of itself is maybe not enough. You need to teach yourself to do things differently and not just think about things differently. And so there needs to almost be this realignment. And I think this realignment and balancing of the way we think about things, what our realities are, and how our nervous system reacts to circumstances also forms part of that grief journey. I think in my last video I spoke about how the therapy journey that I've been on gave me a lot of value in recognizing some of the historical things that I would have liked to have been different growing up or in my earlier adult years, and recognizing, okay, well, you can't change the past, but there's things that I can do differently going forward. And the grief of losing my dad when I did in the way that I did was more about recognizing, well, there was stuff that I was looking forward to doing differently or experiencing with him and with my boys together in a way that would have mitigated some of that past challenges that I would have experienced, which relates to the perfectionism. So going back to the kind of perfectionism for me in the workshop really was a place where I could connect with my dad, or at least felt like I could connect with my dad, but it was very much a parallel journey. And so I was learning by observing how he would do things and then got to experiment myself, but received very little direct teaching from him. And I'd been imagining as my boys grew up that I would get them in his workshop with him, and by doing that I would start to learn or encourage a bit more of a teaching component to that engagement, and that I would find a place of connection in that, and so that is gone, and so my workshop journey is about trying to grab onto something of that, um, to allow where I'm at to kind of be out there a bit more, and to be able to reflect on that and take my kids along on that journey. And yeah, so I mean, again, this doesn't feel perfect to me, in terms of how I've articulated things, and that's part of this journey of like just going with it and seeing where it goes. And my most recent project that I've done, I mean, something that I want to show you now, and I think it captures something of that idea of something doesn't need to be perfect. There's something that you want to achieve out of doing it, and to get that thing right doesn't require perfection. And so let me take you on that journey. So, as I've shared last time, this is my dad's table saw, Robland K26. And it's, from a woodworking point of view, what I learned to work with growing up from a very young age. But it's also unlocked for me being able to do certain projects that for a long time I just didn't bother because I didn't have access to this tool. And this is my latest project. This is a nautical chart. My wife is a open water swimmer and she just loves this. And she'd been wanting me to frame it for a long time. And I said to her, well, once I can do the project on the table saw, it's quick and easy. And the angles, when doing a right angle frame like this, there you see it's a very, I mean, I guess it looks perfect, very neat and tidy, and that's not something you can easily do by hand unless you have the skills. And what's interesting about getting that angle just right, the right angle, is that the angle that you cut it at is not 45 degrees as you would expect. You'll see it's actually just off 45. And that for me is a very interesting thing, in that it shows that for something to be just right, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that for me is an interesting thought to leave you with. And so, yeah, I'll leave you with that, and you look forward to the next video.